Let's talk about Wind Waker. Okay, so there's never been another Zelda game, or really any other game for that matter, that has made me feel the way that The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker made me feel way back when I first played it a long time ago. There's something about that game. I don't know what types of phrases you'd use to describe it. I feel like the words that I kind of gravitate towards, it's a little cheesy, but it's got a magic to it, you know? Plenty other incredible games that I've played have like their own magic, but Wind Waker has always had something that's like really special going on there, you know? And I mean that specifically more so rather in regards to open world games, like especially in that kind of part of it. I was hoping that like Breath of the Wild would maybe kind of trump it in terms of being my favorite Zelda game. The lead up to Breath of the Wild was insane, of course, just like how it was for Tears of the Kingdom. And I was like really hoping that it would dethrone it, probably maybe. But in the end, it ended up being like a really close second. And it sort of captures some of the magic that, well, a lot of the magic, I should say, that Wind Waker had. But it didn't exactly succeed 100%, you know? And of course, that's like completely perfectly fine. I only really wanted to trump it based on out of excitement of a Zelda game being that good, you know? Finally having something that meets it or like matches it or maybe even surpasses it. But not just in one way, but in all the ways that I really appreciated Wind Waker for what it was. Which, like, of course, I know they're both Zelda games. Wind Waker's its own game. Breath of the Wild's its own game. Breath of the Wild wasn't the kind of game that was deliberately setting out to defeat Wind Waker. It's just that I could see those parallels because it had been a while since we had, like, a true open Zelda game, you know? Because, of course, Breath of the Wild was the response to all the criticism that Skyward Sword got because Skyward Sword was so linear, you know? And before that, Twilight Princess was kind of open. It had some open spaces, but it wasn't like a true seamless open world where you could kind of just go where you wanted to, have this sort of sense of agency, and be really free. Quick side note about Twilight Princess though, now that I've mentioned it. Twilight Princess, I think, has the coolest, most best castle town out of any Zelda game. Out of a lot of games that are like in the same vein as this game, genre-wise. It's like crazy how much that Castle Town is like lively and full of energy, and I just, oh my god, I love it so much. And see, like, that's what I mean. All Zelda games have that sort of something to them. They all have that magic, but so like, let me actually get to explaining what is it about Wind Waker that makes it my favorite in the first place. What's the magic that Wind Waker has that makes it so special? What didn't Breath of the Wild do to usurp its place as my favorite? I don't really think it's like nostalgia talking. Obviously, there's a sort of slight layer. I don't think I have rose-tinted goggles that are too foggy on, but overall I feel like if you were to even go back and play it now, like on maybe the original GameCube, maybe on like whatever NSO services they've got you can play it on right now, even if you were to, actually maybe I shouldn't speak of that before I get struck down or something by the big end. If you were to play any kind of way, you'd be hit with that magic all the same. Way back in, wait, when did this game come out again? Whoa. I just double checked. I just Googled it. 2003? Whoa, okay. No, like, okay, but I think that's a good segue, actually. I think, let's talk about the elephant in the room about, like, the thing you first think about when you think about Wind Waker, the art style. Crazy that this game came out in 2003. Hasn't aged a day. Alright, that's kind of a slight lie, but it's very good looking still to this day somehow. When you look at, like, the old GameCube footage, not talking about, like, the Wii U HD version, maybe you can spot a couple of like flaws here or there that are just obvious, like old 2000s jank or old 2000s hardware limitations. But man, this game is just, oh my lord. That art style completely and utterly speaks for itself. The other game I always lump in together with Wind Waker when it comes to talking about timeless graphics is Okami for sure. Okami I'm a massive fan of. Can't wait to speak more on that one later. Definitely want to do a video on that one. Just like generally gushing, expressing my love for that game. Can't wait for the sequel, but Wind Waker is just one of those weird ones that just has this bulletproof art style that is completely and utterly timeless. And like, you can see the influence of this art style in basically every following Zelda game, except I guess for Twilight Princess, but not really. I'll speak about certain things in regards to that in just a second. So like Toon Link is my favorite Link, bar none. I think Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom Link comes pretty close. I actually really like Twilight Princess Link a lot. Twilight Princess Link feels kind of like, next to Ocarina of Time Link, like the most standard generic Link. But I really like him, actually, even for that exact reason. He's sort of like the baseline. But like Toon Link is just a whole nother different little guy, you know? obviously the most expressive off-the-wall version of Link that we've had still to this day. I like Breath of the Wild for so many different reasons, but one of the biggest things I think I disliked about Breath of the Wild, as much as I actually really like, I just said it, as much as I really like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom Link, that version of Link is like, he's such a plank of wood. Link he's cool no matter what, because he's Link, right? But like in that game, he has like no expressions. There's very, very few times anything that has to do with emotion for him is like far and few between. It's unfortunate, but Toon Link, like, though, couldn't be like more of an antithesis to that, you know? I know that like the devs really especially want for Link to be this conduit for the player, this medium for you to experience the game through. Part of the big reason why Link is a silent protagonist in the first place, of course. But I feel like in Breath of the Wild, they kind of take it a little too far. And in Wind Waker, it's like completely the opposite. Wind Waker Link just emotes constantly in these over-the-top ways, non-stop. And so like I just absolutely can't get enough of them. You know, it's strange. You'd think that with their mission to have the player like self-impose themselves onto Link through him being silent, the version of him that's the most stoic and silent would be the one that most players would be able to like actually embody, if you will. But strangely enough, it's like the one that's the most opposite from that like it's not just me. I'm pretty sure that Toon Link is like a lot of people's favorite. The one that has the most personality, is the least silent, is the one that a lot of people particularly gravitate towards. And when you think about it, it kind of makes a lot of sense, actually, as weird as that may kind of seem, because like I think they struck a really good balance with Toon Link. I think to make Link work, he needs to be silent, actually. I want to make a whole video on silent protagonists some other time, like in the future as well. So that's like a whole another can of worms, but just know that I think it works. I think it has to be the way that it is. But I think that there needs to also be sort of a balance that's struck. Otherwise, you don't really get the full effects. There needs to be at least a little grain of, there's this sort of phrase a long time ago that one of my creative writing teachers told me. You'd be surprised about like the places where it applies in life, like a lot, actually. It's the saying that even the most incredible, most believable lie has at least a grain of truth in it, because otherwise it's unbelievable. So there's sort of like a principle that's applicable there and here. And I think this is why Toon Link works. Like when this version of Link is angry, you're angry with him. When this version of Link is laughing or happy or celebrates, you celebrate with him. When he's sad, or when something goofy is happening, or when he's ticked off, this Link is just so sassy, of course, as we all know. You feel that alongside of him instead of like going counter to him. Because in a lot of those situations, it's sort of just like a human thing. A lot of the situations that he's put in, it's just natural to go along with him, you know, like feel what he feels in the first place. Oftentimes, those things are the things that you'll be feeling anyways. You know, like in the beginning, obviously, his sister, the whole inciting incident that makes the story kick off, his sister gets kidnapped by the Helmrock King, you know, the giant bird. I don't think anyone would react the way that Link reacts in the moment, you know? So, like, it kind of just makes sense to not only have him react that way, but I think it's even a safe bet to perhaps make him overreact as he does, you know, give him these crazy over-the-top expressions, which then gets more out of how the player is feeling. The player feels even more. Like, the moment in the very beginning, this is such an iconic scene, the one where he's in the barrel, right before you get into the Forsaken Fortress, your first attempt to save your sister, Auril. Auril is his sister's name. It actually took me ages to figure out that that was her name back in the day. I think it's because her name is actually not very often said in the game, but like also that doesn't make any sense because I'm pretty sure Wind Waker has the name of the character above their dialogue box like very many other games. I don't know. So I actually just double checked. No, this makes sense. Nobody has their name above their like dialogue boxes. All the dialogue boxes are just general big blocks. You actually don't even know who's talking. What the heck? Never mind, younger me. Okay, forget it. Man, those little things that you don't realize are sort of like newer modern gaming conventions. Whatever. Anyways, super long tangent over. That scene of Link in the barrel is no lie genuinely like a top 10 Zelda scene for me. It's so funny. And so you get it. This game is like super quirky, super personality driven. But swinging it back to what I was saying before in the very beginning, the personality is just something that I kind of just fell into talking about naturally, as you can see there. But it just makes sense because it coincides with essentially everything that I'm going to be talking about going forward. Now, I'll swing back to that in and of itself too, but really it's like the open world of this game is something that's really special. And something that I feel like, despite so many more open world games coming out since its inception, there's really been nothing else, to me at least, there's nothing else like it. So like a long time ago, we really didn't even like have open world games. The term open world wasn't really a term that was even used. I know nowadays they're especially not even using open world. They're using like open zone, like that's how Sonic Frontiers is described, or like how a lot of the newer Monster Hunter games are described. And I found that funny. It's like this sort of weird postmodernness of open world games, because everybody wanted everything to be open once upon a time. That was like the ultimate standard that everybody looked at every game franchise for. But in recent times, there's sort of this counterculture that's been brewing in regards to open world games. It's always funny to watch things flip like that. So yeah, Wind Waker was really ahead of its time and was like going crazy with the open world formula way before anybody else pulled up to it, in 3D at least, and to my knowledge. So really, it's the Great Sea, you know, and the way that the devs somehow elicited this sense of vastness, I guess you could say, to the world before you in Wind Waker. It's very, very good at making you feel small and like the world is just gargantuan and treacherous, especially. Like, a lot of it has to do with how the world is opened up to the player, I'd say. This goes back to what I was saying about the whole rose-tinted goggles thing. I think part of it has to do with me being a lot younger when I first played this, but I still think this effect is pretty strong even to this day. Like, the way that you sort of start off as like a small town kid from Outset Island, really just from your own small secluded village or corner of the world. Obviously, this is a very common RPG and fantasy story kind of thing, but in Wind Waker, it especially feels particular, because like Outset Island is really like a sort of litmus for the kind of game that Wind Waker is, and honestly a lot of Zelda games to come. Like I was saying earlier, all Zelda games build on each other. Like the ones that come after will always build on the next, but this one in particular has a lot of qualities that are really foundational to the overall Zelda series moving forward. Like, this game is like really sandboxy. That's kind of what I would describe it as. Like, I remember when I was younger, when I first played it, I just messed around in Outset Island for a very long time, a very, very long time. Just messing around with like the little crabs in the sand and seeing how my footprints would look when I ran around, chopping up grass, picking up pots and throwing them at my family members, I guess. Yeah, this game just allows you to do a lot of stuff that you see very prevalently in Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. It's a very like malleable game that says yes to a lot of what the player wants to do. And so it's a game that presents to the player numerous possibilities. That's something that extends to every facet of what makes this game what it is. So with all that in mind, it kind of like gives this larger than life, anything can happen kind of vibe, where really anything and everything does kind of happen. Like, to be honest, I could talk about the strange happenings and occurrences on Outset Island for a while, just in and of itself. Like Snot Boy chasing you around everywhere, for example. The list goes on, but yeah, so from the very beginning, it presents to you this sort of energy. So take all of that and just like scale it up. Talking about the Great Sea and all the scattershot islands and weird, crazy, quirky events that you can encounter when you're out and about doing your own thing, it really invokes this sense of wonder and intrigue, you know, in ways that I feel like many modern open world games, surprisingly, they struggle to capture in the way that Wind Waker did. But like, also Wind Waker has this sense of overarching dread to it that I think is integral to what makes it what it is. Like, circling back around to what I was saying about how the game opens up to you and how it presents itself to you, this game kicks you around in the beginning like crazy. Like Link, I mean, in every Zelda story, the Link is a little down on his luck because that's how the story starts, you know. There needs to be some kind of initial problem for the hero's journey to even take place, right? But I feel like in this one, especially, he really gets the short end of the stick. Like, he is really, really ripped out of his nice, cozy fantasy island life and just thrown into this big adventure that's way larger than he ever could probably think he is. So like you as the player, you feel that, you know. And all Zelda games take a while to start, but in this one especially, it takes you a while before you get anywhere, before you can even sail with the King of Red Lions. Like you got the Forsaken Fortress, there's like some stuff you gotta do on Windfall. And so like with how this game is set up, you especially feel like you're surrounded by strangers. You constantly feel lost. So by the time you do get any sense of agency, you're a little bit nervous and pensive, and you don't necessarily think or feel like the world is out to get you, but you for sure know that it is not your best friend. Like it's its own entity. Yeah, the Great Sea gets pretty wacky. I'll never forget the first time I encountered a big Octorok. The Great Sea is littered with all types of just crazy events going on. Stuff that it doesn't warn you about, stuff it knows that you don't know about, stuff it doesn't expect you to know about, stuff that'll probably be like alluded to in the game but not like outright expressed or explained to you, stuff you'll get from like NPCs randomly if you're like exploring Windfall, or if you're like if you're talking to the Mapfish. His name's actually the Seaman. I'm not ever gonna call him that ever again though, so we call him Mapfish here. So I called him when I was younger. I'm not gonna call him anything else aside from that, especially that name. But like, yeah, you'd randomly encounter these crazy things when you're out in the Great Sea. I think the go-to that most people think about is the big Octorok, because the big Octoroks, they come effectively totally out of nowhere. I mean, unless you're on the second playthrough and you just know where they are, it just seems like you've just been ambushed by a massive sea monster. And if you encounter them at a weird time, I think you need the boomerang. It's pretty difficult to deal with them. I think they can be dealt with either the boomerang or the bow, but either way, if you encounter one and you don't have either, you're in big trouble. So now my favorite, I guess you could say, like world element set piece that you could see randomly out and about. Personally, I really like the massive cyclones. I love Zephos and Cyclops as characters. Because like you have the little cyclones, there are these little ones that sit on the sea surface and they kind of just give you a little bit of a boost. But then you have the massive ones. It's been forever, so I don't know the order in which you encounter these two, but like you look at those and then you compare them to the massive ones. The massive ones, they're just insane. They touch the sky basically. Yeah, super intimidating stuff there. You kind of have to just like marvel and steer clear. Otherwise, you know. Of course, many of us who were curious minded and wanted to see what was the deal, we all definitely we met a terrible fate, didn't we? So when I first played this game way back when, I was afraid of the little cyclones as well as the big cyclones, because my first encounter with the big cyclones gave me a pretty bad impression of cyclones in general. So I wasn't sure or not whether or not the smaller ones would also like trigger Cyclops showing up or something like that, or maybe like some type of like enemy encounter. For a while actually was pretty. But that's what I mean. This game gives you this sort of, because back in the day there was no internet. There was no, I mean, like you had the manuals, I guess. You kind of had the guide. You probably could have gone to GameStop and got some type of like, but that's what I'm saying here. That's like so analog. That's not like a walkthrough. And Cyclops throwing you literally across the entire Great Sea, crazy punishment, was way too much of a risk. So sometimes I would just steer clear of the little ones as well. But also, I'm a massive fan of the Fire and Ice Isles. Those are especially a crazy spectacle to gaze upon when you don't really know what you're looking at. Just like randomly encountering this giant mountain volcano thing that's spewing out lava and fire is crazy when you just don't know anything about the game. And then of course same thing goes for Ice Isle, where you have this giant blizzard stricken island just sitting there in the middle of the ocean. Crazy cool stuff. I even felt this sort of sense of confusion. You even feel that way in regards to like the Great Fairy Fountains when you first find them, because again, you don't know if something is out to get you or not. You don't know if it's friend or foe. And so like the Great Fairy Fountains are the perfect opposite of something being hostile to the player, but like even so, you just don't know until you experience it. So I was always like, what are these giant, like, what were they, like I think they were conch shells? Yeah, what are these like giant seashell islands? And like of course some of them had like special conditions that you needed to execute in order to actually access them. So for some of them I would just kind of like encounter the islands, but I would never be able to like get inside. So there's so many like world building set pieces that always have this sense of mystery to them that just keeps on adding and building on itself. It's funny, I've naturally shifted over to talking about the world's like different islands and stuff, not just the events, because the islands are events in themselves kind of as well. But the normal islands that you just in general go to, like Windfall, like Dragon Roost, Forest Haven, they also they also have a particular presence to them that invokes the same feelings, of course. Like when you first sail to Dragon Roost and you see the massive silhouette of the island, and you see Valoo and the giant cloud that swirls around it on top of it, you know, the Forsaken Fortress with all the giant searchlights scattered everywhere. Yeah, this game has a sense of aura to it that is just so cool. Something else that I absolutely have to talk about, something that this game does that I actually long since should have said something about by now, is its dynamic weather. When it storms in this game, you really feel it. Like, bro, when I was younger, oh my lord, sailing on the Great Sea when there's a storm out, honestly, even when it's just a little bit cloudy, when it's like rainy, it makes you so tense. That's what I meant, especially when I was talking about there's this sense of dread that's kind of integral to the experience. Stormy nights are so interesting in this game. It's crazy. I feel like rarely have I encountered another game that invokes this sense of, without being completely and utterly scary, this sense of pins and needles, like something's gonna happen for sure. But I mean, nothing actually happens whenever it's stormy, funny enough. When I was younger, I was always afraid something would happen, but the more I sailed through stormy weather, the more I realized it was just cosmetic. But even still, you feel this sense of weight, like it just messes with your senses. I don't remember the exact details, but there's an event after you get out of Forest Haven, after you get the second Goddess Pearl. There's this time period in the game where everything is storming constantly and it won't let up. So story-wise, Ganon has put this curse on the sea. So like in every Zelda game, Ganondorf has this ability, this really weird ability to be able to remotely send monsters to a specific place or afflict specific areas with like curses or something like that. And I always just find this to be honestly so funny because it just seems so busted when you think about it, but I slightly digress. That period where the sea is curse stricken when I first played through when I was younger was a very, very stressful time. This is something that we all know now through like dev interviews and through digging through the game's files, but Wind Waker was supposed to have way more content than actually what was in the final game. There's like so much cut content. I think more cut content than probably any Zelda game for sure. And so this event was supposed to be something completely different. And really, it doesn't take like a super genius to figure this out. Like the last two things the player does before this, the first one is Dragon Roost, and then the second one is Forest Haven. And in those events, you go through a dungeon to receive one of the 3 Goddess Pearls. It's kind of your mission for the first act of the game. So it's just basic logic, and it's just sort of the rhythm of, I think every Zelda game has a similar rhythm. Many games have a similar rhythm to this. So this kind of MacGuffin hunt is a pretty typical hero's journey kind of thing. It's standard for a fantasy adventure like this. So instead of going through a 3rd dungeon to perhaps get the last Goddess Pearl, you arrive at Greyfish Isle to realize that the place is completely ransacked. The island is like literally completely destroyed. So on the last pearl, the rhythm of the game is completely upheaved, and you go do something completely different that you didn't think you were going to be doing. And after this, as you go on this wild goose chase to try and find this pearl, the sea will not stop storming. Some out there might not like this moment very much, but I personally like it actually quite a bit. I especially think it's pretty memorable, which is why I took the time to highlight it so greatly. I think it's actually pretty interesting pulling the rug from underneath the player like this. I just wish that there was like maybe a boss at the end of the event. Like I feel like that would be the cherry on top that would really make it feel like it belongs, because when you play it, you can definitely tell something's cut here, something's missing. I think I even remember feeling this way back when I first played the game. Like even as a kid, I was kind of like, that's it? That's okay, if you say so then. And I feel like maybe like some kind of fight, some kind of boss would have made the event feel a little bit more like it belonged. But you know, it is what it is. I'm sure they did what they could do with whatever constraints they had, because when you look back at Wind Waker's development cycle, it had a pretty crazy cycle. With that being said, I think this is a great jumping off point to talk about criticisms, because as much as I love this game, I got to talk about some elephants in the room, especially because mostly what I've been praising here is like sailing and going from island to island and just kind of taking in the atmosphere as you know, just generally travel from place to place. Because funny enough, one of the places that many people find the most fault in Wind Waker's formula would be just that. It would be the travel. And obviously I felt the burn too, just like everybody else. As much as I love this game and I love what it has to offer in regards to that, sailing is just nuts in this game. You literally sail from island to island with like 10 minutes in between each island. It's insane. Bare minimum like 5. Maybe even if it was 2, it would be like a bit much because you're just so taken out of the experience. I remember what I would literally do, because your boat just auto sails. I would just like set the wind into a specific direction, and then I would just like I would just like come back later. I would hope that he just would not run into anything, and I'd check the map, I'd see where I was at in the Great Sea, and go like make a sandwich or something in the meantime, you know? And I've never played the HD version of Wind Waker. I know they have the swift sail in that. Obviously they know about how grating going from place to place can be in this game, despite it being also one of its greatest strong suits, because otherwise they would have never added the swift sail. I'm sure they want it for you to be able to travel from place to place a lot more quickly. It's just one of those things where it's like, again, this game was way ahead of its time, and this is a GameCube game, so it probably has to do with like loading and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's a double-edged sword, because in one aspect you're immersed and you're chilling, and in another aspect you're kind of like, after a while it kind of wears off and you're like, this is getting dull. And I just feel like it's fascinating that even through all of that monotonous sailing from time to time, I still was blown away by the world, and the world really like just captured me, and I just was so awe-inspired by the spectacles that it had to offer, and that I feel the way that I feel, that I still feel like there's no other game that has hit me in such a way, you know? So with that being said, let me talk about the differences between this game and Breath of the Wild, or I guess you could say even just other open world games in general. So back in the day, again, like I was saying earlier, we didn't really have a genre called open world. We didn't consider certain games to be open world games. If a game was open enough, we kind of just considered it to be like maybe an exploration game, or I don't know what term we would use, but you know, the genre, the term open world is a relatively new kind of concept. It's something that only really caught fire probably, I'd say, around maybe like 2015, probably, maybe 2015 and up. Maybe there were flickers of it in between 2010 and 2015, but I don't remember. And so the first game that I ever played that I considered to be air quotes here, you can't see me, but whatever, an open world game was Xenoblade Chronicles X. Oh my god, I love that game so much. And to be honest, looking back on it, like, for my first game that considered itself to be open world, that's a really good first open world game. Very happy, very proud for that one to be my first. Super cool, because there are some open world games out there that, especially nowadays, if you're unlucky, you can find some that are pretty uninspired and are not very good examples of what this kind of game has to offer. I feel like Xenoblade X is right there next to Breath of the Wild. It's one of the games that sits neck and neck with Wind Waker in terms of giving me the same vibes that Wind Waker initially gave me, you know? So yeah, Breath of the Wild is a phenomenal game. I feel like it's the kind of game that just keeps getting better with age, actually. Like, the more that time passes, I think the game, when you look at like the way that game is built formulaically, it just keeps getting better and better. Certain criticisms that a long time ago I feel like were pretty broadly expressed about Breath of the Wild, I feel like over time are like ironed out. They've strangely transformed into, I'd say, like some of the things that you most appreciate about that game. But I feel like the difference between Wind Waker and Breath of the Wild, it's that when you look at Breath of the Wild specifically, and this is like after you've become pretty familiar with what the game has to offer, I feel like, right? You realize that the experience is actually kind of flat. I use the word flat not in a negative light, even if it might come across sounding a bit negative. I'm just not really sure what other kind of word to use. I mean it more neutrally, actually. Like, it has to do with the way that the game is structured. And when I say this, I'm specifically talking about Breath of the Wild, not Tears of the Kingdom. I'm not going to talk about Tears of the Kingdom pretty much at all right now, because Tears of the Kingdom is kind of its own can of worms that I don't really want to open up. And Tears of the Kingdom is nothing without Breath of the Wild, because it's like, of course, literally built off of it. To be honest, in my mind, I kind of consider Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild to be almost like one and the same entity. I feel like Tears of the Kingdom is extra credit. It's maybe something I'll go into at another time. But because Breath of the Wild has this sort of structure that allows for you to literally go fight Ganon from the get-go, as soon as the game gives you free reign off of the Great Plateau, the experience kind of, similarly to how I was just talking about how the Great Sea and the sailing of Wind Waker is a double-edged sword, this game's open-endedness is also its own double-edged sword, if you will. You have all of the Divine Beast missions that you can go for, and of course by this point it's been talked about to death in every critique about Breath of the Wild under the sun, that like every Divine Beast mission kind of has this feel to it where they are each blending into each other and feel a bit samey. I feel that in certain ways, but that's not really where my problem comes in. That's a factor, but it's not the main thing that makes me say what I've said. It's like it's actually everything about that structure outside of those missions that gives this game's gameplay experience this strange sense of uniformity, I guess you could say. Maybe that's another word that's not flat. but it's like really especially when you compare it to Wind Waker. And when I explain what Wind Waker has still to this day, for me at least, over Breath of the Wild, because like there's like plenty of cool things in the world of Breath of the Wild that you just come across and you just like are mystified by. Like, funny enough, I think the overall world building of Breath of the Wild is like leagues above Wind Waker. I know they're obviously a part of the same franchise, and Breath of the Wild borrows from Wind Waker, but I think that Breath of the Wild has the best world building of any Zelda game for the most part. Like, in terms of the amount of things that they've thrown into it, especially when you consider the overall Zelda canon, it's absolutely one of the biggest reasons for why I was so excited about Tears of the Kingdom when it first got announced. Like, back when we were calling it Breath of the Wild 2, man, that was a time. Now I say that, but we were calling it Breath of the Wild 2 for a very long time, so hey. So like, Breath of the Wild has cool set pieces in it, like the labyrinth. It's got weird locations like Typhlo ruins to find. You got the whole entire region of Akala. I absolutely love Akala, just everything about it. And I mean, the list goes on. There's locations galore in Breath of the Wild. But so like, despite all that, because this game really badly wants to keep itself well-rounded, because it doesn't know exactly where the player is going to be at really any given moment, certain things about the exploration in this game, as cool as it is and as interesting as it can be, certain things feel a little bit more shallow. This is what I was talking about earlier when I was mentioning the formula of the Divine Beast. That formula of like stability, I guess you could say, that consistency that they really want for the player to feel. There's this sort of front and back to it. So like, nothing in this game likes to get too out of line, if you will. Everything hits this sort of this cap or like this threshold that it doesn't want to like breach. So like, nothing in the world in other areas is more important than something else in another area. So like, you know, no matter what, the player will always get something cool, but like everything has to be the same level of coolness. So it kind of leads to this more, after a while at least, this more monotone experience, especially considering like, this is like one of my personal biggest criticisms of Breath of the Wild. There's like no enemies in that game. Like it's sparse. Like to say the least, that's the perfect word you'd use, right? You got like bokoblins, you got moblins, you got like a couple of wizrobes, but like outside of that, not much more. And then you kind of got these enemies where the game kind of like, it cheats a bit, I guess you could say, because you got like the stall enemies, but the stall enemies are just reskinned bokoblins and moblins. And so you also have the Lizalfos, but those guys come in different elemental varieties, which are just reskins themselves as well. So, and those are like cool touches, but those are like not new enemies really. And so like, you know, Breath of the Wild has Lynels, and Lynels are absolutely incredible, but to their credit, Lynels are unbelievable, and they stay fresh for a very, at least for when I played, they stayed fresh for a good chunk of my time with that game. But they're like the only mini-boss kind of characters in Breath of the Wild. There's Hinoxes, but Hinoxes aren't as interesting as Lynels. So you go to these cool locations like Typhlo Ruins, like the Colosseum, the Leviathan skeletons, all these cool places that are really interesting set pieces. But there's like nothing really unique there. They're kind of just window dressing. And so like, swinging it back to Wind Waker, when I look back on it, I'm surprised at how much heavy lifting things like mini bosses and certain dungeons really did to make that experience feel the way that it felt. When you put the two games side by side, I feel like though you could do this for other Zelda games and you'd realize this about Wind Waker. Wind Waker has a lot of different enemies with like different functions to them. Not counting the Choo-Choos, there are very few times in Wind Waker where they do reskins like how they do it in Breath of the Wild. You got your different color bokoblins, but outside of that, you got moblins, mini-blins, you got P-hats, you got C-hats, you got Armos, you got Beamos. Beamoses are kind of like a hazard, so maybe we shouldn't count those. You got Bubbles, you got Deku Babas, you got Redeads. We could keep going, but you get the picture. But I gotta mention my favorite enemies. I love Dark Nuts. I was really hoping we get those Dark Nuts in Tears of the Kingdom, but it is what it is. But so yeah, Wind Waker has these moments where it's not afraid to, you know, layer itself like more thickly in different places depending on where you are in the game. And that just has to do with the fact that it's a linear game in comparison to Breath of the Wild, which is a very open game. Now again, you could probably call both of these games open world, but Breath of the Wild is a game that is it's built different. It's like the most open world game that ever open world did. You get what I mean. It's not normal. Even many other open world games like Xenoblade X, like I mentioned earlier, they have a linear narrative that they go through. Not very many other games completely forego story in exchange for like the player experience. And so like naturally when you do that, you're gonna get, it's like the idea of like to every action there's a reaction. You're just naturally gonna get a game that's balanced like this. So like you get to Typhloa Ruins, and I wish that there was like a new unique and shiny boss that is nowhere else in the game. Or you go to the Coliseum and you find like a big cool looking, let's say like a dark nut or something. Yeah, you get like an iron knuckle. That's like the upgraded version of a dark nut in Zelda. I've just remembered this in the moment here. I forgot about Moldugas, and that's exactly what I mean. Moldugas are like the perfect example of something that I wish was like prevalent throughout the entire game. Like that's a unique boss that only can be found in the desert. It would be cool if there were unique bosses maybe in Death Mountain. Maybe there's like some type of some lava-based enemies, not just like red Lizalfoses and fire keys that are like rebranded versions of other enemies. And so I fully understand that right now I'm basically describing Elden Ring, which yeah, I have yet to play. I can't wait to one day play it, hopefully. And also, I guess you could say what I'm describing here is that Wind Waker has higher highs but lower lows, and Breath of the Wild, while it also has highs and lows, those peaks and valleys are much more leveled out. Wind Waker is a game that left me feeling pretty spirited away in ways that are just extremely unique. And like as I play more games akin to it, I get even more and more baffled about how it was able to have such an effect on me, even with me breaking it down the way that I broke it down here. It's one of those things that reminds you that a lot of this stuff is more art than science. No other game has really made me feel as like whisked away, if you will. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about, and I hope that there is a game, perhaps maybe a new Zelda game, that does achieve this feat in my mind of either meeting Wind Waker or hopefully maybe even surpassing it, like in terms of those kinds of vibes. But yeah, this is the part of the video where if you're listening to this on like a playlist, or if you're listening to this as a podcast in the background when you're doing stuff, this video is about to end, so make sure you get that next video, that next podcast or whatever, get that queued up, because I think I've pretty much exhausted everything that I feel like saying on this topic at the moment. So with that said, stay inspired, stay inspirational.